Dear friends and family, I'm Hugh Daniel Ryan, or as Mom and Dad and the family always call me, Danny. It's been my pleasure and honor to compile this history of my father and mother, Johnny and Ann Ryan. Numerous requests for information about them through the years affirm this need, and it was my intention for more than 20 years, but it was not compiled until the year of our Lord, 2002. Recently obtained computer technology aided the task appreciably. It's been a monumental task, but a work of love. It attempts to span a period of time from 1916 to the present. Proudly, I can say all the individuals mentioned herein are real, and no names or places have been changed. All the stories, the incidents, and occurrences included in the history are factual. As mentioned in the text, in 1986, it was my privilege to sit down and record a personal interview with Johnny Rion, which touched on some of the highlights of his life story to that point in time. The recording was made at the Rion home in Belleville, and as usual in that home, you'll hear occasional background noises of grandchildren and their friends playing in a sometimes boisterous manner. It's my hope these background noises will not detract from your listening to this personal conversation, and that the recording will increase your understanding of and appreciation for the man and his wife this history attempts to portray. Dad, you were born when?
1916, May 20.
How old were you when you first acquired an interest in music?
I suppose I was, when I learned to like it or got inspired to do it too, I'd say about 17 or 18, really. The roots began to take hold.
Your first guitar, when did you get that?
I bought it from a schoolmate of mine, and it was an old one at the time. Not a good quality guitar, but one worth learning on.
You would have been in high school at that point?
It was in my high school years. He played and sang, and I got the idea of doing the same thing by watching and hearing him. He sang for the school when we'd go over, all of us, in the auditorium, and somebody would do something. So he was one day that sang, and I liked the song and the way he done it, so I wanted to be like him. Or play too.
After you got your first guitar?
No, he's the one that I bought the guitar from. In fact, I think he used it that day, and then he offered to sell it to me and offered to give me lessons. But I didn't take the lessons, but I did buy the guitar for $3.50.
How did you learn how to play then?
I ordered books out of Sears and Roebuck, a couple of books, and saw the chords on the songs, on the Western songs, and learned to fit the chords in and learn the notes.
Then how long after you got your guitar did you write your first song?
I don't know definitely. I guess I had the inspiration when I was about 18 or 19, I suppose. I think I was in high school yet, maybe, at that time.
Do you remember what the song was?
The first song I ever wrote was a country love song, yeah. It was Roaming Sweetheart, and it was used, if I'm not mistaken, it was used on the network through the Mutual Network by a lady singer.
First song you ever wrote?
First one I ever wrote. As far as I know, they were on the Mutual Network, and I'm pretty sure she used it on network. If not, she used it locally, if I remember right. That's been quite a while ago. But things like that should not escape my memory. But I think she did it on the Mutual Network. And she also did a Christmas song I wrote during the World War II. She sang that, I imagine, on the network too.
How did you get your music so that she could hear it to do it? Did you mail it, a transcript, or?
I think I mailed the melody to her in that. I had learned to write the melody by that time. And the first one, I don't know how I did get her the melody. Whether I wrote it out, I suppose I did, because I didn't know her too well. Really, I knew her, but that's about all. I think that would be about right.
Since you were working on a farm, did you farm all day and then play your instrument at night?
Yeah, we usually had weekend engagements that took in most of my spare time in the evenings.
What was the first music group you played in?
The first group was mandolin, saxophone, piano. I played the rhythm guitar, and I don't know, seemed like we had a bass player too. I'm not sure about that. But anyway, that is definitely the four, I know.
What was that called?
I think it was called Alvin Wills's string band or something like that. we didn't have many engagements. We practiced mostly. And there wasn't too many engagements then to play for, really, unless it was square dances with a guitar and fiddle is about all that we had then.
What was the next band you were in then?
Well, then I formed my own later on. Had fiddle, bass, and my guitar, and let's see. Later on I had accordion. I forgot exactly what all I did have in the first band. Rhythm guitar, fiddle, of course, and I believe I had a piano. I'm not sure about that.
What was the name of that band?
I called it my all-string dance orchestra, which it wasn't an orchestra really. It was just a group with country instruments, and we played middle-of-the-road songs.
You were playing engagements then?
Yeah, we played engagements, usually Saturday night, sometimes Sunday night, and of course New Year's Eve and special occasions like that. And then now and then, maybe meetings, farm meetings or something. But I did a lot of solo work in farm meetings. Dad was the president of the production credit, and he had meetings around in different places, and I got a lot of experiences through him inviting me to sing at their dinner time. And I broke a lot of ice then.
When did you get the Martha White Mountaineers together?
When Flat River radio station was coming to the area at Flat River, we were organized and ready to go on the air the day Flat River did. The sponsor had already engaged me, and I assembled a group for that for the very first day. And we were all ready when they were ready to turn the station on the air. And we went on of a morning, I think about 7:30, somewhere, maybe 6:30 in the morning, half an hour.
Were you at that point not farming full-time then?
Oh yeah, I was farming full-time.
How did you get around in those days?
Well, the same they do now. Yeah, I borrowed Dad's car, or some of the musicians had cars, and we'd go together.
Since Farmington was a farm community, were most of the musicians from farm backgrounds?
Well, I suppose more or less. Miners work like that probably, yeah.
Did the Mountaineers play other than radio? Did you do personals then?
Yeah, we did personals. Oh yeah, we played fairs, Piedmont County Fair and a lot of fairs. And then I traveled for Martha White Flour. As many nights as we could get for shows, we traveled. Then Martha White gave me a car to go book the shows in the towns where they had a dealer to sell their flour. Mm-hmm. And that way we got in with the schools and gymnasiums, and the doors were open that way through the merchants that handled the product. Then in the show we give away certificates for one way or another, and they would go redeem the certificates for a sack of flour. That'd be prizes we give away. Like the oldest person there, the man with the biggest family or whatever, then we'd give them a certificate for a sack of flour. And the next, whenever they wanted to go redeem it at the store, and the company then would replace the sack of flour to the merchant.
That was a kind of an expensive gift, wasn't it, in those days?
Wasn't expensive, but well, in a way it was. It was a necessary gift, really. Not too expensive, but it was a necessary thing that everybody had in their home then, flour, because a lot of people were baking their own biscuits and bread.
What band did you have after that point?
Well, then when I came to Belleville, I brought one or two of them with me for personal appearances, but I did disc jockey work here at Belleville, but I used them. And then I picked up a couple of entertainers in this area to annex to the ones I had. And eventually I dropped then the ones I brought with me and formed the group from some that had been on the air here in different times.
Going back, when you first went on radio, you went on as a folk singer, huh?
Yeah, as a soloist. Played the guitar and sang, like I do now.
KFVS in Cape Girardeau.
Yeah, that was my first experience one Saturday night. I went down and took an audition, and the lady there, Mrs. Bond, passed me okay and engaged me for the next Saturday night to come down and sing. But there was no money in it, no remuneration at all, and I had no car. But I went 2 years on Saturday night, and out of the 2 years I missed 2 Saturday nights, I think, out of the whole 2 years. But I had people to take me. They would take me down there and watch the broadcast, and it was an interesting thing then, so interesting that people would take me to watch the broadcast. That's how much difference it is today and then. You were more or less a star when you were on the radio then, regardless. Once a week or what, you were beginning to be somebody, and it wasn't a commonplace thing then as it is now. You could be on the radio today and you fight and fight and fight for attention. where the attention just automatically went to you if you were on the air. People tuned in as far as they could hear you if they knew you were on, and you would begin to be a celebrity, really. If they saw you pitching hay the next day, I don't know what they thought about that, but anyway, you were a celebrity for that purpose. So then I went every Saturday night. No pay, but I charged it up to my education and the career.
Before you sang your own songs on the air, though, people were singing them in different markets too, right?
Yeah, I had already begun to write well enough that others were using my songs, yes.
Who were some of them?
Skeet Chaney was one of the main ones that sang and recorded some. Roy Queen was the first to sing any of them, and he sang several. Skeet sings 30-some, and we shared them together. When my name appeared on a song that I wrote, and he sang it, his did too. We shared that way.
What was Roy Queen on what station?
He was on KMOX with Skeets, same program. Then other stations, WEW had a group, and some of them used some of my songs, and I wrote a song or two with some of them, in collaboration with some of them. I wrote the Boston Fire, where years ago killed so many people at a nightclub, where Buck Jones, a movie star, was killed at, I forget what gardens they called that. Anyway, I wrote a song about it called The Great Boston Fire, and one of the men on the radio sang that for me. Frankie Townsend was his name, and then we collaborated on a song or two together. And then there was another personality there, Les Gamlin, who yodeled a whole lot like Skeets, competed in contests with Skeets with his yodeling, and he sang some of mine that Skeets was singing also because their voices were a whole lot alike.
Did Rex Allen too?
Yes, he sang some. I don't know if I ever heard him, Danny. He sang some of my songs, and they came out in a library, in what they called, NBC called it Thesaurus Library, where stations would rent the library and use it, and that way that person's name and his voice would be on their station. You know what I mean by that.
Mm-hmm.
That personality would be heard on that station. And years ago, about that time rather, Denver Darling and his Darlings, I think it was, he was in New York, I believe, and he hit the trail, and he had an orchestra type band. He cut it for NBC Thesaurus. So I wrote and asked NBC to send me a copy, and they sent me a copy of that song, cut on glass. Pure glass. No, I don't have it. It was too destructible. I don't know what happened to it, but I do wish I had it now. But it was a glass cutting, a record. And I wrote not too many years ago about their library, and they said it had vanished. They didn't know where. But anyway, Rex Allen, and then his wife, who sang with a couple of ladies on WLS called the Little Country Girls, they cut some of my songs. And M.M. Cole in Chicago, who published Gene Autry's songbooks and a lot of WLS people's books, he had the library on transcription the same as NBC had on theirs, and he rented that library out. So the songs were in that too.
When people in the St. Louis area were singing your songs, you made appearances on some of those programs too, didn't you?
Yeah, Saturday night I was with Slack's Barn Dance. I was on the extra board, they called it. They'd call me whenever they needed somebody to fill in or something, then I went up and sang on the Saturday night program.
And then you were involved in a weekday program too, huh? On KWK?
Yeah, later on I was. After KMOX, yeah. I was at KWK with Roy Schaefer then. That was in 41, I think.
So you were being paid at that point?
Yeah, I was being paid, yes.
Your first 2 years of volunteer work in Cape Girardeau were starting to pay off, huh?
Yeah, just like you pay for an education. You begin to hang your shingle out, you know.
At what point did you stop playing music in the studio and start being a disc jockey then?
When I came to Belleville,
you were...
I had also begun to be a DJ at Farmington, where I had the band at noon. I also then started that because my brother, your uncle, Howard, suggested one day that I would also take a program where I played records. In case I got to where I couldn't sing, I could probably play records, which was a good idea. So then when the job was open here, I was already hot to trot for that.
Here, you know, meaning Belleville?
Yeah. So I was already in tune for the disc jockey job here by having went through that afternoon program down Farmington.
When you were on KREI, though, weren't you sending transcribed discs to KSTL?
Oh, I forgot about that, Danny. Yes, I did. I cut the discs, the announcements on transcription, and the station had the records, and I would send the list of the songs that were on the transcription. They would stack the records and play my announcement and then play the record. That's the way they did that.
Who was that for? Carson?
No, that was for a record shop, Laclede Music, and another record shop in St. Louis. Ogle Music Shop and Laclede Music out on Laclede, I guess it was. They were the biggest wholesale record, and still are, I guess, in St. Louis. Laclede Music. Johnny Pohl had that.
Then two music stores in competition?
Yeah, they were brother-in-laws, I think.
Oh.
They were more or less together. Here's a song here. You asked about my publications. Here's one in Dixie Publishing Company here. This was put out by Dixie Music. And this man here, Smiley Sutter, I never met him. Smiley Sutter was singing. So what they would do, they would take songs, didn't make any difference whose. The publishing company then would go to Smiley Sutter and say, hey, you need a songbook. We've got the songs, we put it together, you sell the book. See?
What year is this?
No,
42.
No, it's 42, yeah. And then I have another one in here too. See, I had here, other men's names begin to appear on my songs, see, because whenever they would sing one, why, we more or less collaborated together on it, you know. 42, I guess that is. And they sold these books.
No.
There was no BMI them days, Danny. There was no way you could get paid for a song being played on the air. You just simply donated it. The only way you could make money them days was to sell your own songs on the air or to make a record, but there was only 5 or 6 artists making records, so there was just no way to make any money unless you were with 10 Pound Alley in New York that was Irving Berlin or some of them. There just wasn't any way unless you took a book, put a lot of people's songs in it and sold them, and the publisher okayed the sales. He was a clearinghouse to prohibit plagiarism.
Or you could go out and play dances and be paid that way.
Oh, you done that? Yes. Yeah, but that wasn't because you wrote your songs. It was because you played somebody else's.
Well, you came to Belleville in 1950 on WIBV and stayed how long?
2.5 years.
And where did you go from there and why?
I went to KSTL for the same sponsor who had a program at KSTL, but it covered more area. And the man running that, Pat Cook, was killed in an auto accident, and the boss then sent me over there to KSTL, and I stayed there till 1966.
What did you do there? How many shifts? And 3 times a day, wasn't
No,
it?
I did 4 a day. I would do 2 in the morning, 1 at noon, and then in the early evening till sign-off.
Also, you were on other stations at that same time, though, by tape, right?
During those years, at various times, I was on as many as 4 stations a day, if I remember right, by taping the bigger part of those shows. I taped a lot of them right here in this room, and I saved some of them and updated some of them and repeated some of them because I was playing the same records week after week, more or less, not like the top 40, but requested songs. And the requested songs is what I played mostly. They would occur, of course, 3 weeks from now or whatever, so I knew then it was safe that I would still be in the trend to play a tape a month old if I wanted to update it.
That was an unusual thing about your program, was requests. Or unusual today, but you received mail from listeners.
Yeah, I received over 1,000 letters one day, requests and different letters, and I received hundreds a week. When I'd go into to my office of a day, there would be a desk there piled with mail. I had as many as 2 girls at the time working on the requests and dedications.
Do you remember the most mail you ever received?
Well, 1,000 letters one day, over 1,000 one day.
Was there an average?
250 a day about for a long time.
There was something else you were involved with at that time, and that was promotions.
Oh, yeah.
What about
I don't want to leave that out.
the Hillbilly Parks?
Yeah. Years ago, Roy Queen had the first Hillbilly Park. Years ago.
Was there was one in Okawville, though, Illinois?
Yeah, when I came to Belleville, Roy Schaefer had a park at Okawville, Illinois. So when I replaced him, He had bought a dance floor from a man in Lindsborg, Illinois, and it was in the contract between he and I, or agreement, that I had to buy his dance floor when I replaced him, and he wanted his money for the dance floor. So we used the dance floor out in the park. It was a sectional, hardwood sectional dance floor, big one.
Mm-hmm.
And so I bought that, and some would dance while we played our show at the park. So I inherited, really, through the job, his park, the location, and the dance floor. And we operated that until I went to St. Louis, and Pat Cook had, in the meantime, began one at Chain of Rocks. And when he got killed that year, then he had contracts ahead, and I helped finish his contracted jobs from Nashville, and his wife was involved in the contracts. So I went ahead and plugged the park for her for the rest of the year. And then at the end of the year, it was all dissolved, and then I took the park over, and we operated that then until I came to South Broadway.
And you did that through 1958?
Yes. One season we went to Granite City with a park, and jointly with Bob Hastings, who had a park over there. And so we went over there 1 year, and then we returned to South Broadway. And in '58, then I closed my activities at the park.
Do you remember some of the entertainers at the Okawville Park?
Yes, I had Pappy Stevens and his group with Don Whitney from Blytheville, Arkansas radio station, and I had local radio personalities. I believe I had Johnny Bond out there. I'm not sure. Of course, I had Cowboy Jake, I think, for now and then. He played with us some too. I don't rightly recall exactly who I did have. Some local talent I had.
Your band at that time would play in between the artists appearing, right? So there would be entertainment all day?
Yeah, and the park, the area wasn't so populous that we could have real expensive people,
Mm-hmm.
because it was remote, and it was in an area where you'd have to travel 30 miles or more to get a crowd of people. They'd have to come from a long ways if I had a crowd.
Your park in the Missouri area, though, were more accessible, and you had bigger names. And who were some of those?
Well, the bigger names then, we got into the big Nashville people like Pat Cook had already.
Mm-hmm.
Jimmy Dickens. We had people who became famous for their songwriting as well as their hit records. Slim Willett that wrote Don't Let the Stars Get Any Rise. We had him because of the popularity of his record and the song. And we had Elton Britt, who was such a marvelous yodeler. We had Rosalie Allen. No, I didn't have her, but he sang on the records with her. A lot of people from different parts of the country in the music business besides Nashville.
Mm-hmm.
We had Slim Whitman, of course, Hank Williams Jr. when he was 9, and we had...
his mother and sister on the same day.
They were along the same day.
I saw some old contracts today. Ray Price was a regular.
Yeah, Hank Snow, Carl Smith, Ernest Tubb, and some of the others we could always depend on for a crowd if it didn't rain us out.
You also did radio remote broadcasts from some of those parks, didn't you, Dan?
Yeah, my programs were 7 days a week, and on Sunday evening when we had our park, then I would do the broadcasts from there. I called the little place the Chicken Coop. I would interview people, talk to them, and play the records.
Also in that 50s, there was a time you had a TV show, right?
Yes, Cowboy Jake and I shared that one night, night after night. In other words, I'd do one night and he would do the next. And so we did our TV show that way for a year when Channel 36 was in this area. But I never really liked TV as well as I did radio because of the informality of radio. In the beginning of television, it was like anything else. There was this sophisticated area where everything had to be done to perfection if you could. Like, don't move too fast. Watch what you do with your hands, and don't blink your eyes so fast, and just an idea. It would make you uptight before you even went on, and then you had to be concerned about your appearance. And then the next day I'd go and do radio without a tie or whatever I wanted to do. It was simply too informal for me not to like it. But to like TV, I never liked it so well because there was a double duty there for your appearance as well as what you did.
You had a lot of notoriety as a songwriter, and people were recording your songs from Nashville and other places. You made a trip to Nashville and cut some yourself.
Yeah,
Who was in that recording session you did there, Dave?
I cut a session. Chet Adkins played, Roy Wiggins played, Van Howard, who sang with Ray Price on Crazy Arms, I think, and Curly Rhodes played the bass. Van played the rhythm guitar. Let's see, the fiddle. Dale Potter played the fiddle.
And who produced it?
Red Sylvain. I was thinking, did I mention the electric guitar?
Chet Atkins.
Oh, yes, right. Okay.
What were those songs?
Well, there was only 2 ever came out. One record, 2 sides. The other sides they never put out. Why, I never did know. It was on ABC Paramount, and they were A Little More Each Day and Our Love Is Just Fading Away. The others was I Can't Find My Way Out of Your Heart, and I forgot what it was.
But you also cut your theme song there that you used up for all your radio
Yeah, the
shows.
same group cut my background for my theme song. We had some time left over in the union contract, which was 3 hours, I think. So I had some few minutes left over, so they cut the background for my theme. I had cut with Jerry Bird in Cincinnati at King Studios before I cut with them down there. Jerry Bird and Tommy Jackson played the fiddle.
On what songs?
A Package Tied in Blue, Blind Child's Prayer, Sunny Tennessee, and Handprints on the Window Pane. They were all mine, but the Blind Child's Prayer. It was the tune to the Iron Mountain Baby. So there was a question which one I would cut. So I cut the Blind Child's Prayer because Iron Mountain Baby song, I was a little concerned about names mentioned in the song at the time. So I put it on the shelf for a little bit. But I had cut it myself locally.
They came out on King Records?
Yeah, they did put all 4 of my sides out. I had a 3-year contract with them to cut 8 more sides. And then when I went to work for my sponsor here in St. Louis, he frowned on his workers cutting records. So then between us, I just canceled my contract because I had a job. My boss said either cut records or else. So I elsed. But because I had a job getting paid and the royalties then from records was only a penny a side, so I couldn't very well see. Even though my record was #1 in some states, I still couldn't see leaving a job, making a livable wage for a few cents royalty on records.
In those days, there weren't that many people playing country music on radio.
No, there wasn't really a whole lot of people doing it. There was few stations then.
In those days, sometimes hillbillies were even kind of chuckled at on some of the more pop stations, etc.
Yeah, they were looked upon.
During your radio career and your promotional career and your notoriety in the country music field, your good friends in Nashville, something happened that changed your life.
You talking about my being saved, becoming a Christian?
Yeah.
That was 1958 in September. It was quite a surprise to me. I didn't know there was such a thing any more than just plain religion.
But here in 1986, since that time, you've gone probably 1,000,000 or more miles driving. Anytime anyone's ever called, you've gone to speak to the congregation to hold revivals. You've become ordained. In a sense, that part of your life has lasted much longer than any of the other things you've done, but you've still maintained your music and your hymn portion of your music composition we didn't really touch on.
No, I still write. In fact, I write mostly hymns today, but I still write country songs. Mm-hmm. I try to fit my philosophy and my views of morality. If it takes a country song to do that, that's what I come up with. I am not left or right wing in this. I'm kind of in the middle of the road, you might say, to touch a person regardless of his status. Getting back to when it happened, like I said, I didn't know there was such a thing as being converted from what you really tried to be on your own. But I didn't know there was such a thing as God really taking hold of you and like sitting on a shelf and saying, now look here, there's more to this than what you've been trying to attain yourself.
But before you reached that point, you had sung hymns, you'd believed, you had written hymns,
In fact, I've got some on tape today that I wrote long before that ever happened to me. I always had the idea that there must be a formula somewhere in human nature to fit in a concentrated morality that would drive a wedge right in between right and wrong, and the wedge would be the very thing of which you had been looking for. In other words, I see it like God created man, and sometimes he works at it all the man's life and he never gets done with him. Everybody out there, he either has finished or he's still creating. He didn't just give us our life and then our body and say, that's it, now go on out and use it. But we don't realize that until actually we let him catch up with us and finish us, put the finishing touches to his creation. There's many men today who have attained success, riches, and are wise. Still, God is still trying to put that final touch of creation on that person. He creates him, if necessary, till it's too late.
Is that finishing touch spirit?
Yes, it is. I suppose it's a little bit difficult to explain when you really don't see anything to explain. The only thing you can explain is a feeling, more or less, or something that you know, but you can't hold it in your hand and say, here it is, look at it. But it's like a pain. You can't say, here's my pain, look at it, but you do know that you have it. Like I mentioned, it takes him a lifetime nearly sometimes to finish his creation, and then you begin to polish it up. When we are indoctrinated with God's completion, and then we still have our human nature, but then what made Christ what he was then is in us.
You've been ministering how many years now, Dad?
I guess nearly 28. It'll be 28 next February, because I started preaching in February 59.
Do you have any idea or guess how many churches you've been to in these years and how many miles?
No, I should have a record of all those things. I have books here of dates and places where I went, but the books are not all together. They're not in chronological order. And I was looking through a little booklet I have there yesterday of dates, I don't know when it was, of where I'd traveled many miles to just a little church, and I still do that.
Are there any churches, any types of religious churches you haven't preached in?
Yes, I never preached in a Lutheran church, and some I haven't. Yes, I don't think I've ever preached in a Mormon church. There are some, yeah, but the majority I have of the general line denominations.
Have you ever not gone to a church that's called you?
Because of their belief?
Because of any reason?
Because of sickness once. I think I had laryngitis once, I think, probably, is about the only reason. Or the only reason, I mean, not about.
With your diverse talents and abilities, what's the greatest thing that you've accomplished thus far?
Well, it's kind of diversified, as you mentioned. I don't know. I see myself as a person who has tried many things, and am known for one thing in one area, another thing in another, and it's kind of hard to contend with. Sometimes it's hard to sleep with, and you see imperfection, and you see many mountains that you could climb. You look back and say, if I would have done it this way, it might have worked better. I don't know, Danny, but I'm more happier in the Christian work, really, because I found what I searched for. I'm like the farmer that was called into the ministry, but he kept his plow. He still went back and he sowed his crops.
Of all the things you've done, then, what would you prefer to do most? Preach?
Yes, I think, yeah. Yes, I would, because it has a higher meaning. It has a more of a foundation for which a person can stand on. Like the other night at the steel guitar convention, that was one of the highlights of my whole life, because all them people were compatible with what I came out of.
In 1986, Johnny's longtime friend and fellow musician, DeWitt Scotty Scott, asked Johnny to give the opening prayer at the annual International Steel Guitar Convention in St. Louis. That was a highlight in Johnny's life, as he mentioned in the last interview. Also in 1986, in October, Johnny was invited back to his hometown station in Farmington, Missouri, KREI. Johnny, in turn, invited Roy Queen, Wade Ray, and Bob Hastings. An October Country Music Month special was featured. It was a 2-hour program sponsored by 22 local merchants, with announcer Ken Crickhand conducting interviews. The program was billed as 2 hours with 4 local legends of country music. At the close of that program, Johnny Rion was asked about the greatest highlight of his career. It was a comment from which he never wavered, and to which he was faithfully committed to the remainder of his days.
Johnny, what about you? You got a story for me?
I've had so many wonderful things, Ken. I was trying to pick out something. In 1958, I had shook hands with the most famous people in the business. And a lot of them had stayed in our home, visited with us, and we'd had them at our park. But there was still a vacant spot in my life. I couldn't quite find satisfaction. I had done all those things, had some success, made some money and everything, but I still hadn't reached what I wanted in all this career of mine. And in 1958, I was converted and found Jesus as my Savior, and that is the greatest thing that ever happened in my life. It's still, my friends stayed with me. I didn't leave my friends, and the church doors opened for me, all denominations, and I preach and hold revivals, and that's the most blessed thing in all my career. And all the people I have met, I love dearly. They have been so much, meant so much to my career. Roy, Bob, and Wade, and all the people, a lot of them are gone on. But when I spiritually shook hands with the Lord, that was the most precious time of my life, and it just means so much to me, and it stabilized me. My friends have been so wonderful to me since it happened. They respect me for it, and I'm just so thankful, and I think that's the highlight of my whole life.